All right, good evening. We are here to go over the adolescent lesson from week 6. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And there we go. We are on the home page now. The overview walkthrough is there now. The early childhood walkthrough is there. The middle childhood walkthrough is there. So we are on the adolescent one, recording that right now. So adolescence, objectives for this unit, this lesson, 3 physical changes that occur during puberty, 2 social characteristics common to adolescence, describe primary psychosocial tasks according to Erikson, cognitive development according to Piaget, moral reasoning according to Kohlberg, and then 3 factors that help to promote wellness and I would say safety as well in the teenager, and examining social determinants of health that may adversely affect adolescent health. And we're going to focus in on that on teens that are houseless. So you've got your reading there and the activity assignment, which is to write about the effects of being houseless on the growth and development of the adolescent, and the lesson, and then your journal entry for week 6. And again, the activity assignment and the journal entry are gone over in detail in that overview video in the course objectives blue tab there. So let us now move to the lesson on adolescence. So for adolescents, we are basically talking about 13 to 18 is the age group that we are looking at. And there are your objectives again, the reading, the assignment, the journal entry, and the lesson. Again, that previous website was no longer valid, so I added in the positive parenting guide, and then the group advocates for youth. This is 13 to 17, about anticipatory guidance, things that parents need to know. And we will come back and end with the PowerPoint. So things to keep in mind as you are learning about teenagers, morality. So we will go to Kohlberg's morality for the adolescent teenager. So we are still in conventional, make that a little bit bigger. We are still in conventional. So for the school age child, we were in stage 3 conventional morality. And now we're going more to, there is social approval, but then there is also ethics of law and order, understanding that really there is law and order, there should be law and order, and we need to follow that. Many people don't even get past stage 4. They don't even move into post-conventional morality, which has to do with social contracts and being driven by social order and individual rights, and universal ethics as well, behavior that's driven by internal moral principles. I would venture that, I don't know, Gen A for sure, Alpha, I think is much better at moving into 5 and 6 at an earlier age, just based on things that they have, they've lived through. There's your morality. We go back. This should take us back to the lesson where we just were. And so I think for teenagers, morality is difficult. They're trying to grow. They're being conventional. Their peers are very important. They know, they do understand that there are rules and laws, but the peers tend to take over. So as they move, as they move into early adulthood, that stage 4 conventional morality will solidify a little bit more. And nutrition, you have your Bright Futures Nutritional Guide again that talks about adolescent nutrition, and then healthy eating during adolescence. This is coming from the Stanford site. You know, eating 3 meals, good snacks, balanced meals. A lot of times these kids are cooking for themselves. but still making healthy food choices, all the different food groups, activity, still doing that 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity for most days, and healthy eating, a lot of snacking, a lot of partying. And sometimes in athletics, they need to either gain weight or lose weight, depending. And so fad diets are quite common. So make sure that as much as you can, try to talk to your teenager about those things. And then you've also got the link there to Stanford that has all the nutritional guidelines. So I think it's important to try and at least try and have the conversation. Tell the parents to at least try to have the conversations, or if there's handouts that you can give them or direct them to specific apps or websites or something, I think that would be helpful for them. We're still continuing on with vaccinations. If we look at this one, it will show you here 12, 13, 16, 17. If we look at this one, I think this one goes 19, so that's more of early adult, 19 years and older. And if you go back to the early childhood lesson, we talk about how many more vaccines nowadays that there are than there were, say, in the mid 80s, or even from 2000, like 76, 74 doses, something like that, 17 different vaccines. We have the flu, we have COVID vaccines now, meningococcal, pneumococcal, varicella, all different kinds. We've talked about drug misuse in the school-age child, and it will continue into adolescence. There's a lot of, experimentation, trying to fit into the peers, the social norms, the group. And so I think being open, having open conversations earlier than later, we talk about that in the middle childhood lesson as well. But these couple articles, one's from the CDC, this talks about a national survey that there is more and more drug use. There's 12 and 13-year-olds are 33 times more likely to have tried tobacco or tried alcohol when they say they attend a drug-infested school compared to a drug-free school. Because there are some schools where drugs are quite prevalent and other schools where they're not. Some schools where it looks like they're not, but there's a lot of underground, I guess you would call it, hidden drug use going on. And then it says the older teens, 2/3 of high schools are drug infested, so a term that they're using. And it's been rising steadily, which is just really, really scary. And so, if a person can get to 21 years old without smoking, using illegal drugs, abusing alcohol, then they probably won't do so moving forward from that if they get to 21. But most people have tried at least one of those substances, I'm sure. And then it talks about gangs, or even peer groups, private versus public schools, religious schools. And then it talks about how they conducted the survey as well. So I think it's interesting that it says nearly half of teens from public schools report that gangs are at their schools, compared to only 2% of teens at private and religious schools. I will tell you, coming from a private religious school, there aren't gangs, but we had cliques. There were groups that that were doing drugs. We had you could take a bus to go to the Del Monte Shopping Center, different malls around, and so the teens would do that. The teens that were at school, and then they would meet up with the day students that had cars, and then they would go out and party. So there wasn't necessarily gang-related activity, but definitely cliques and certain groups that you knew were drinking, smoking, and doing drugs. So it is prevalent there, even though it may not be reported that way. Remember, in a study, it depends on how you ask the question as well to get the answer that perhaps you're looking for. So continuing on, vaccines, drug use, and then looking at the CDC report, which I thought was kind of scary. It says that they're finding that teens use drugs often alone to ease their stress and anxiety. The teens these days, I mean, I have one that's in his early 20s, the others in their early 30s, but the teenagers these days, the amount of stress and anxiety that they feel is just unbelievable. So I can understand why the teens would say that they want to forget about a problem or a bad memory. We've talked about different social determinants of health. So clearly, we could see why that would be escapism, something that the teenagers are trying to do. And so I just thought it was interesting. Again, another article, rising anxiety, and what they're trying to do is forget. So we really need to try and find ways to help those children cope and find other solutions instead of turning to drugs and alcohol. And hopefully, we've done some anticipatory guidance ahead of time with the child as well as with the parent. Hopefully the parent is able to talk to the child, spend time with the child, but as we know, that does not always happen. So it's really quite sad. Drinking and driving. So this little section here is a little bit graphic. This is not an actual accident. This is some high schools do this where they have a day where they call it moulage, where they dress some of the student volunteers up and bloody them like they've been in a automobile accident caused by a drunk driver. And so talking with your kids about impaired driving, it's not just alcohol. It's not just drunk driving. Drunk driving can also be substance abuse. You can, any drug that you're taking, it can also be lack of sleep. That's another thing. When you work that 12-hour shift that turns into a 14-hour shift, and then you have to drive an hour home, it's really, really difficult. And so how do you talk to your kids about that? How do you set the example for your child? Are you picking up the kids and you've been at the bar all afternoon? What kind of example is that for drinking and driving? And so there's one student story here, A Light in Dark Places. It's pretty intense, but it gives you the perspective of this particular person and what happened with them when they had been drinking and driving. And then this is another video that talks about this particular high school that did this. And it shows it's fake blood, just so you know. And the whole school is there. The whole school comes out and sits and watches, and the emergency medical personnel come and show what it's like to resuscitate someone, how you might have to pull someone out of the car. It's just really intense. So I think sometimes it could be teenagers think they're invincible. They think, oh, this isn't going to happen to me. I'm a teenager. I'm invincible. So I can try whatever I want. Although I do think a lot of teenagers these days, not that they don't care, because they care, but because of that anxiety and stress, all right, well, if I get in the car and I've been drinking, it's okay. It'd be better than what my anxiety and stress level is now, which is another thing where we as healthcare professionals need to try and help and start as early as possible to get these people, these children, help and recognize issues early on, get the family to understand what the issues are and not just brush them aside. We'll come back to the homeless youth in a minute because that has to do with your assignment. Teen suicide. So we covered school age suicide in the previous lesson, and then now these articles talk about teen suicide. More than 20% of teens have seriously considered suicide. So psychologist communities can help to tackle, excuse me, that problem. It's a tough one because you have to be able to recognize it and be able to talk to children, to students about this. And a lot of it goes back to the mental health of our children. So being able to recognize these developmental milestones, these mental health issues, being able to show parents, how to therapeutically communicate, how to respect the children, and to help them, and then to help them find resources to help their children and themselves is really important. But when you have both parents working, or maybe it's a single parent household with multiple children, and then all the things that are going on, regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on, economic, religious, whatever side of the aisle that you're on, there are so many burdens and stresses and pressures put on children, young adults these days, that it's really, really difficult for them. I actually talked to my youngest about it a lot, and he'll tell me things I didn't even realize that I did or didn't do, or a tone of voice or something, and we talk about that. So I'm learning things. So I try to pass those on. Uh, let's go back. So it's another good article about that. Um, and then another thing that adds into this stress and anxiety, especially, would be gender identity topics. This is not something that I've taught for a very long time, because this is sort of a newer concept that's being talked about now. But I do think it's really important to talk about, and to have some knowledge of the where is it? The reference up here, this Advocates for Youth, has a lot of interesting articles on gender identity, different cultures and gender identity. And so if you have questions or want to read some of those on your own time, I think that might be a good idea. There's also, I posted a couple of different videos. This one actually says that 40% of homeless youth belong to the LGBTQ plus population. What does it mean to be transgender? That's sort of the newest, I guess, term for the way that people are identifying. And I think if you can just learn some of the terms and understand what they mean, and what they mean to the young adults, to the adolescents, to even the children, then I think it can be very helpful. I would guess that in more traditional families, cultures, that is not talked about at all. And we didn't, I didn't grow up with that. We had gay and lesbian. That was it. There were no more. There were no more initials. And my parents rarely, if ever, talked about that. So I think just even listening to the children, to your children, teaching the parents to listen and to ask questions. I ask my kids questions all the time. What is this? Who's this person identifying as? Why? How does this work? What do I call them? What should I call them? How should I address them? And so what my children tell me is that, Mom, they can tell that you're trying. You're not just blowing them off or being mean, or biased toward them. So I think just having some curiosity is a good thing. And then they had at Boise State University, which is actually one of the universities that some of our students continue on to pursue their Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. They do have an online program, a distance education program, which is a very good one. And so they enrolled in a psychology course, and they actually did a blog and asked the students a lot of different questions. So this is not something I expect you to memorize or know, even. It's more for your interest to see how these particular students answered the questions, the topics, how they felt about the topics that were in this psychology course. And so let's go back up now. We talked about that the homeless youth, that's what your assignment is on, effects of being houseless on the development of the adolescent. This particular article about Will is a local Monterey resident. This article is from several years ago. I just found a new YouTube video. I don't know how new it is. It's actually about 3 years old, but that talks about how he moved from not having a house to being an entrepreneur now, which is really kind of cool. So if we go to that page, I'll let you look at that but it because the links don't work. It might work for you, but they blocked me out. It's an article from Pacific Grove, and yeah, so he's an engineer apparently now, works with solar. So I thought that was pretty cool. But I don't, he was 22 at the time they did this. You can research him. But his name's Will Prouse the fourth. But I just thought it was kind of interesting because he's local as well. We don't, we think maybe in Salinas, but not in Monterey, or oh, there's not a homeless problem here or there. Well, really, there's homeless problems everywhere. It doesn't mean you live in a tent. You could live in a car. You could live in many different things other structures other than a traditional house. And for some people, that's okay. That's the life that they choose. But for other people, they don't choose it. And that was sort of one of my aha moments as I have taught this course over the years, how many college students are without a house, without a home, and live in their car and need extra help with funding and nutrition and housing, all the basic Maslow necessities. And so I just think it's really interesting to think about. So let's go on back up to the PowerPoint. And let me see if it loads. If it doesn't, then I will go back and download it. Give it a little bit of time here. And this particular lesson will be the end of the videos, the walkthroughs for week 6. And I will start working on the week 7 ones for this weekend and get the grading caught back up. Excited to look at your journals for week 5 and week 6. Just going to go ahead and download that one. That's taking a while. I hope it's not that long because I talk too much as it is. Okay, there we go. Yay. All right, so let's take a look at the adolescent PowerPoint. It again will be in the same format as the other ones, with the same kind of formatting with the topics. And so this one is oh my gosh. So this is Adolescence from several years ago. These are actually this is my youngest. This is my one that's 24, and these are his pictures of my granddaughter who's now 8. So these are pictures from 8 years ago and farther than that. But different wacky things that teenagers do. And then talking about puberty, different things, the Bermuda Triangle of pre-adolescence, and then adolescence, pregnancy, drugs, suicide, drinking and driving, identity, all those types of things are still there. So yeah, you get to see my kid, sorry. So puberty, pre-adolescence is kind of in that 10 to 13 years. Again, I don't need you to know that. I don't know why science keeps changing it. I guess they're trying to make it more streamlined. But there is a part of development that comes before puberty and adolescence. Like the body starts to change, and there's all these little kind of changes in retrospect that you go, oh, that's what that was. Where you have this rapid now physical growth. Remember, we had slow and steady growth. Now we have rapid growth. And production of eggs and sperm, secondary sex characteristics, hair and growth of breast tissue, body proportions. You kind of do the filling out before the growing taller, growing up. And then to grow and mature. That's what adolescence means. And looking at becoming independent, right? Because you're growing and maturing, and you are going to be an adult at the end of this time period, so they say. And really finding that identity. This is identity versus role confusion. And so, as it's traditionally called, that particular phase. And the peers become so important, and trying to figure out who am I and how to actually find your individuality. Because if your peers are who you're around and you want to be like them, then sometimes you can lose your own sense of identity and who you are and who you want to be. And so, growth and development, uh, early adolescence, middle adolescence, late adolescence. So we're going to say that adolescence is, we're going to use the 13 to 18 age range, but know that it can start earlier and go later in some reference books. And then the different physiological changes that you might see, these would be children in 6th or 7th grade, and the girls will usually grow taller faster before the boys catch up eventually. There's weight gain. The growth is asynchronous, meaning it happens this way and that way, and there's no real, doesn't necessarily happen all in the same direction at the same time. And things just, everything improves and gets bigger, larger. I don't even know if these videos work anymore. They might. I actually took videos of my son's class when they were in 7th and 8th grade, and then took a video of the same kids, because that's the same theater kids, when they were in high school. And so you can, if you want to take the time, let me know if they work or not. You can see the difference. The heights, the girls are really tall, but now the boys have caught up. And it's really kind of fascinating to me. And then glands, hormones, all these hormones are floating around, and your reproductive organs become functional. And so that's why talking about sexuality, intercourse, gender, reproduction, why those things are so important. For procreating reasons, bringing other people into this world. Sexually transmitted diseases are a problem, can be a problem. That's a health safety issue. And so that's why we want children to learn health and safety. And then this just talks about they call them Tanner stages for secondary sex characteristics. So those are the things that you can see on the outside, not on the inside. So when you talk about primary sex characteristics, those would be the testes and the ovaries. But the secondary sex characteristics would be for females, the budding breast, pubic hair, that growth spurt that comes, menses, the first periods known as, some people say menarche. I usually say menarche, growth of underarm hair. And then for the boys, the growth of the scrotum and testes, that voice change, that awkward time when the guy's voice changes. The penis lengthens, growth of pubic hair. And you can see where the girl gets the growth spurt starts first, and then the boy's growth spurt comes. And then body shape, more muscles, and facial hair, underarm and facial hair. And the thing is that when this happens, it happens at different times for different people. And so sometimes the girls will get, their breasts will start to enlarge, one particular girl before anybody else, or a boy's voice will change before somebody else. And the kids just will tease them unendingly, ceaselessly. And so to try and give that cognitive rehearsal again, trying to give the parents some of these therapeutic communication techniques, and maybe practice some responses of things to say when the kids start to tease their child. Pregnancy is a concern. Birth control depends on how you feel about that. Some schools do offer birth control without parental consent. Hopefully they're getting some sex education that has the actual correct information about how a person becomes pregnant, when that time frame during the month is. And I think that's important. And it's difficult to start that conversation when the teenager's already sexually active. Hopefully those conversations will happen sooner. And then sexually transmitted diseases. Incidence of those is increasing, talking about safe sex, prevention, This is actually my son's first on-stage kiss. And so, yeah, that was kind of fun. I was really embarrassed, but that's okay. We did talk about it. It was kind of interesting. Um, Sexually transmitted disease or infection, the risks, um, unprotected sex, multiple partners, alcohol, and drug use, right? Because then you're not necessarily thinking um, safely. And so to keep those things in mind, and then this just, again, you do not have to memorize any of these. It is just to know that they are out there. There are different types of sexually transmitted diseases, infections. I don't think sometimes the parents or the children, teenagers understand that there are all these diseases out there, and many of the, you can die from syphilis. Yeah, it affects the brain eventually. And you can transmit these diseases to multiple partners, and you may not know you have it. They may not know they have it. Getting tested is a good thing. You can also get HIV, which could potentially turn into AIDS. We're blessed that we have many more treatments these days, which is a good thing. So if we move on to the cognitive development for Piaget, so we're moving into the formal operations. And if you remember from the school age PowerPoint, when we talked about going from concrete to the abstract. So formal operations is abstract, meaning able to think, like to imagine possibilities, really. Some people get stuck in concrete and they can't really think about abstract thoughts. Most people do move into formal operations. So pretty much after, like when you get to the teenage years, you are in formal operations. You can see, um, the possibilities. You can extrapolate ideas, imagine sequences of events. So that provides you with choices, right? Um, but it's difficult because you're trying to fit in, right? And then you've got morality in on that, and there's so many things. And I love this little graphic about judgment and the areas of the brain that control our executive functions in terms of which parts of the brain are develop more quickly than others. And the 20-year-olds still the brain isn't fully developed, even at 20. So, there's still a lot of learning and experiencing that can go on. And then moral development, we talked about that already. Psychosocial development, so identity versus role confusion. You want to achieve, hopefully, a stable self-identity. I don't know how high school is supposed to help you achieve that. But apparently that and maybe starting college is supposed to help with that. Hopefully the family can offer support and guidance. We are seeing now a lot of kids, what are they calling them? Boomerang kids, that they will leave the house and then they will come back later because it's just harder to be out on your own these days. And so hopefully the family, if the teenager will listen to you, can offer some support and guidance, offer their own stories. It's really difficult to listen to your child's experience when your experience is different. So if your clients are older parents or the parents are closer in age to the child, that makes a difference in what their experience, what generational experiences that they have had. And so trying to remain open is really important, and to try and understand what the child is going through. Homelessness, we have talked about that. Cultural considerations, we've talked about culture, week 2, week 3, somewhere week 3, yeah. And religion, and sometimes in families those are very strong influences, and then sometimes they're not. Adolescence is a time where the teenagers will try out what their peers are doing. So if the peer is going to a synagogue, maybe they'll try synagogue, or they'll go to church, or they'll same thing, try different music, try all kinds of different things that are good and things that are maybe not so good. But it's all part of learning and growing, right? Those experiences build on who those people are. So emotions and peers, it's really, dating and having crushes and, um, uh, short-lived sexual relationships. It's really takes a toll on the person. The younger kids are kind of like hiding their feelings and sulking. And then as you get a little bit older, you kind of test your boundaries. Um, yeah, this young lady right here just turned 22 the other day. She's one of my son's friends. And then this is my other son here, the one that has the 8-year-old. Um, and then emotions also as you get 17 to 19. So that's young adult. And young adults are thinking about, setting up, having jobs, setting up households, maybe settling down, maybe not settling down, maybe going on to further their education or travel or try different things. But there's many responsibilities. And I think today, even more responsibilities and um, the jobs are not necessarily there. Things are very expensive. It's very difficult to find housing that's affordable. Um, what career are you going to have? Politics, religion, in our world, I think is in a crazy place right now. So those are all very stressful things that can cause anxiety. That's that's my middle child there, the boomerang kid that still lives at home. Nutrition, right? So still need calories, boys more than girls. Remember, because there's the growth spurt going on. And then minerals needed for that. We're still checking blood pressure. We're still checking cholesterol, checking for diabetes. Um, and then this is a time again when the teenagers will experiment. So they might do some fad dieting or trying to gain weight or lose weight. This is also um, dieting, things like anorexia nervosa or bulimia, those are actually considered mental health conditions and can be found in the DSM-5, Diagnostic Statistic Manual of Psychological Disorders, version 5, because it has to do with body image. And they're both emotional disorders. In how you see yourself. So you look in the mirror and what you see is not what other people see. And you basically are doing anything to look the way you think that you should look. Um, and so those children, hopefully we can um, be aware of those things. The teenagers do a really good job of hiding it. But hopefully if we can notice or be kind of looking for some of these things, then maybe we would be able to get them some help or counseling or the help that they need. Physical activity, right? We're still at that 60 minutes a day, vigorous exercise. Part-time jobs are common, so hopefully that gives you some time to do other things. Money, there's that money again, how to save money and not spend it on everything would be good. But when you have to pay for food and rent and school, it's a lot. Um, so hopefully there's scholarships available. Oh, I forgot I had that picture. That's my youngest with his guide dog. She just passed 3 weeks ago. So there is a growth spurt, and so we need sleep, right? 8 hours. I think we said what, 10 to 12 hours earlier. And if you don't get enough sleep, I'm sure you all know, especially going through this summer class, not poor school performance, I don't mean that, but irritability and health problems. And you get cranky if you don't get enough sleep and rest. Naps are really great. I love power naps now. I really enjoy those. And so the sleep phase is interesting because it's actually the way that the teenagers what do you call it? Their circadian rhythm, the rhythm of how a teenager is, they actually stay up later and want to sleep during the day, not because they're lazy, but because that's the way their bodies are wired. That was a huge thing for me to realize. And so if there's ways that we can, again, with that anticipatory guidance, letting the parents know, would be helpful. The problem is that school starts at 8 o'clock or 7:30, which is peak sleep time for teenagers. So I think it would be kind of cool someday if they would move the school schedule around. But then you also have your sports, which are after and before school. A lot of practices are before school as well. So I don't know, but if you have a cranky teenager, that's probably one of the reasons why, because their circadian rhythms are in a different pattern than everybody else's. Communication. Yeah, I don't know who has teenagers, try to talk to a teenager. It's very challenging. If you don't have a good, how do I want to say it? If you've not developed good communication skills prior to this stage, it's difficult to kind of all of a sudden, boom, start using good communication. But hello. My dog is here. But any communication is better than no communication. If the children, the teenagers feel like at least you're trying to understand them, then that's a good thing. And keeping an eye on their media, who they're hanging out with, the driving thing. I always wanted to know who my kids were driving, who was doing the driving. They had to call me. I knew when they left the house, but they had to call me when they got there, and they had to call when they left so that I knew when they were coming back, and I had to know who they were driving with, and that family. They couldn't just drive with anybody. Maybe I was overprotective, but that was the rule. Discipline. Ugh, how are we going to discipline our teenagers? Because they're almost adults when they're 17, right? I mean, and to think that if you're 17, you're not an adult, and if you're 18, you are an adult. We give these cutoffs, these age cutoffs, and I just think it's a little silly sometimes. But depending on those family patterns, that's why we talked about functional and dysfunctional families. We talked about the family systems theory and how the members of the family are integrated and how they play off of one another. And that's why all that's important now, because now we have our teenagers. How do you discipline? Do you ground them? What is that parenting style? We have to teach them still somehow, even as young adults. We have to teach them what's important, or how are they going to get a job, things like that. And it's really difficult because they're going to fight you a lot. So supporting them as much as you can, teaching their parents what to expect, counseling, peer groups, support groups, Facebook groups, I don't know, blogs, all different church groups, can all be very, very helpful. Violence and safety. So we've talked about a lot of these things. There's more strength and less judgment. Drinking, texting, and driving. We see homicides, suicides, a lot of sporting accidents. We call it Friday night lights, like the football games. The high schools, usually the games are on Fridays, and so Friday nights. And so if they get hit, it might have a spinal cord injury. It's really, really scary. And then depending on your thoughts on guns, firearms, there's many different thoughts, and depending on where you are in the country, have a gun, not have a gun, what kind of gun are you, what is gun safety, those types of things. Just really important to talk to your kids, to teach your clients to talk to their children about a lot of these things. And it's really difficult. When you're, for example, in the clinic, you can ask the parent to leave while you go over the more personal kind of type things, because a lot of times the teenager isn't going to want to talk to you truthfully if their parent is in the room with them. So I always left once my kids got probably 12, I think, 12, 13 for sure. I would leave the room, or the doctor would ask me to leave. And then usually they would tell me what they talked about when we were on our way home from the doctor. We'd always talk in the car. Depression. Again, there's those articles on depression. Third leading cause of death in 15 to 24-year-olds. Giving them privacy, but not too much, independence, but have some limits. It's just really it's just really difficult. And like I said, the kids these days are having more and more bouts of depression and sadness and anxiety. And just to hopefully be aware that that those feelings are out there, or have check-ins with the kids. Because just because they look like everything's okay doesn't necessarily mean that everything is okay. All right, come on, come on. Goodness gracious, yes. Say hello. Say hello. This is Petunia. This is my new little foster dog. Keep her till she gets adopted. Say hi, Petunia. Um, yes, I know. Okay, 3 more slides. Yes. Substance abuse, we covered that already. And one of the things, we have the fentanyl crisis right now. Right now, we've had it. We'll probably still have it. But the thing is that you can go to a party. The teenager will go to a party, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, we're going to smoke a joint. We're going to have some pot, or I don't know, whatever you want to call, whatever they call it these days." And it'll be laced with fentanyl or some other PCP or some other drug, and the person that's ingesting it has no idea, and then they end up dead. So it's just really, really sad, sad situation that we find ourselves in. Health promotion, right? So talking about different screenings. Oops, I should change that. This is 2019. I'll have to look that up, get you 2024, but pretty sure they're pretty much the same. So the kids need to continue to go to the doctor. They need to continue to go to the dentist, have their regular vision and hearing tests. We've been monitoring the blood pressure, cholesterol, anemia. We keep doing that. We check for scoliosis in grade school, in the school age child, continue to do that in the teenager. Make sure the immunization, especially the HPV, human papilloma virus immunization is a good one, and that is for boys and girls. And skincare, acne is so, right, like appearance is so important to teenagers, and skincare is so important. Soap and water is great. That's great. But if there are other skin problems, acne, then get a referral to a dermatologist, or at the clinic, ask about that. And hygiene. Yeah, they forget to take showers. I don't know, clean dirt under their nails. Like, hygiene's really important. So kind of remind them to stay clean. Other teens are doing hygiene 24/7, and the wafting of the cologne out the doors is quite evident. Like, they're almost over hygiening. But brushing teeth, all that, washing hair, all that kind of stuff is really important. And then that's a wrap slide, which you don't necessarily need, because you don't have to know all those specifics for this. It's just, this was a basic overview. So let me go ahead and stop sharing. And so that pretty much talks about adolescence. And so now we've covered prenatal, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, infancy, early middle childhood, and now adolescence. And so for week 7, which is next week, oh my gosh, almost 2 weeks left. I will do the walkthroughs for early, middle, and late adulthood and advanced old age. And then week 8, we will focus on grief and loss. So as always, if you have questions, feel free to contact me, make appointments for my student hours. Just message me if you have questions as well. And hopefully you like the shorter videos, which weren't really that much shorter, but I will try. And have a great weekend.